guys, I swear to God, I am so annoyed. I spent so long trying to film this video, and the first time my camera died, second time it filmed, but then I thought that my camera filmed for 25 minutes before turning off automatically, but no, it was 18 minutes, so that cut off, and then my memory card was full, and then the next time I thought it was filming, but it wasn't filming. So this is like take, what, 10 or something, and let's just hope that you're filming right now. Hello guys, and welcome back to my channel. So I haven't done a sit down video in a very long time, and it's been highly requested that I finally sit down and do a video on how to plan a gap year. It's long overdue. I know in my gap year video that I uploaded maybe almost 2 years ago, I said that I would do one, and yeah, now I'm finally getting around to doing it. Hopefully you will find this useful if you're planning a gap year or considering a gap year. If you're new to this channel and you haven't seen my previous video, which is my gap year experience and why I think you should take one, then I would suggest that you go and watch that video first. I will link it here and below. That gives more of a general idea of what I did on my gap year. So just as a little brief overview, I backpacked for 7 months. I didn't come home during that period. I earned every single penny for that trip myself. I didn't get money from my parents or from anyone else. I paid for all of it by myself, and lots of people think that you can't do it. That's why I kind of wanted a video to show that when you're planning your gap year or even thinking about planning a gap year, that there are ways in which if you're planning it properly and you have organised it and really thought about it and put effort into it, then you can do exactly what I did, or do whatever you want to do that you think is not possible at the moment because you don't have the money or because you don't know how to even begin planning it. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing you're going to want to do when you're planning a gap year is you want to think about what do you want to do in that year. What do you want to do? You could do so many different things. You could do the popular option of going travelling, which is typical gap year, which is, I guess that's what I did. You could just work for a year, you could be retaking your A-levels, you could be reapplying to university and it's kind of an unexpected gap year, you could be, I don't know. There are some people who think, oh, if I just sit at home and I've got a full-time job for the whole year, then that's like a wasted gap year, then I'm not really achieving anything in that gap year. No, I completely disagree with that. You don't have to go travelling to have a good gap year. You could, honestly, if you need the money or if you just want to get the experience of working in the real world and having a real full-time job, and you want to earn that money before you go to university, because university is expensive. It's so expensive. So honestly, if you just want to take a year out to earn a lot of money and work full time, then that is perfectly fine and a good use of your gap year, because yes, you might not be doing exciting things like going travelling, which also costs a lot of money, but you would be gaining so many skills, so much experience of just living in the real world and understanding what the value of money is. It was only until I worked in my gap year that I really truly understood the value of money. Yes, I'd had part-time jobs when I was 16, 17, whatever, but it was only when I was working full-time that I really understood the value of money, and it taught me lots of valuable lessons. So that is one of your choices for your gap year, and by the end of it, you will have earned a lot of money and you can use that towards university, or you can put that in savings, you can do whatever you want with it. If you guys want me to make a video on what you can do in your gap year, what options there are in your gap year, then please give this video a like and comment below to let me know that you want that video, because if I talk about all the different options you can do in your gap year, then I will be here forever and this video will be very long. So yeah, if you want me to do a video on what can you do in your gap year, please let me know. Specifically in this video though, I'm going to talk about my experience with my gap year and what I did in it and how I planned it. That's the first thing you want to do. You want to decide what you want to do in your gap year. The second thing you want to do is you need to decide where you want to go if you've decided travelling. So where do you want to go? Well, for me, I knew that I wanted to take a gap year from quite a young age. If you saw my other video, then you'll know that. But for many people, it's a last minute decision, or they're deciding when they're in year 12, and that is perfectly fine. I started planning, I think, towards the end of year 12 with my friend. It wasn't anything concrete. In the summer, we started discussing what we could do. We both didn't want to do Europe. We ruled out travelling around Europe for our gap year because For me personally, and I think she felt the same, we knew that we live in England, we live very, very close to Europe. We didn't want to spend our hard-earned money and a year out of education to just travel around somewhere that's so close to home. We knew that we could always travel to Europe, we could always do interrailing in the summer holidays that you get at university. Europe is so close, you can get there so easily, it's cheaper than other destinations you can travel to, so we just wanted to make the most of our gap year, so we decided no, we're not going to do Europe. You can do Europe if you want a shorter trip or if that's what you are more interested in seeing, but for us personally we thought no, we can always do Europe whenever. When can we do other things longer periods of time? We also both knew that we wanted to go to at least one different country that neither of us had been to before. I was really heavily influenced by a travel blogger called Molly Violet. She's now rebranded and she's called Where's Molly Now, but she backpacked up Australia's east coast, and I was already considering Australia because, well, as I just said, in my gap year I wanted to travel somewhere that was far away that I wouldn't be able to do much in holidays, for example. So we decided to go to Australia. I wanted to go because the sun, the backpacking, it was typical backpacker route, people spoke English. I don't even think we took that into consideration, but it is something you can take into consideration. And also Alice wanted to apply for marine biology at university. She didn't apply for deferred entry, she applied in our gap year. So it all kind of fits together really well with the Great Barrier Reef. And then we both also knew that something we wanted to do was we both wanted to go back to China because it's a very personal thing for us, and that was just one of our personal preferences, which obviously influenced our choices in our gap year. So we are actually both adopted from China, and although we've both been back to China several times before our gap year, we both personally just wanted to go back and spend some time living there. We wanted to get the experience, we can teach English, and we also wanted to study Chinese in China. We just looked into that kind of stuff, and then we also thought that we could do a stopover in Bali because it's on the way from obviously Australia to China, and Bali was known to be really cheap and a backpacker place. I think it's really, I mean, I did my gap year 2 years ago, and I think Bali has definitely become very, very oversaturated, and even when we went it wasn't as nice, it wasn't as authentic as it used to be, and definitely now 2 years on it's probably worse. But it's still a good place to go, I would recommend it. I've written some blog posts on what I thought about Bali. I would like to go back, but only to certain areas. Anyway, so that's how we kind of formulated what we wanted to do. We were going to apply for this program, which was 5 months in China teaching, like a 5-month program teaching. But then we realised that what if we didn't like teaching and we were stuck there for 5 months doing it? And I can say after doing 2 months I was done after 2 months. I was done. We then decided no, let's try and be a bit more flexible. We looked into programs which you could do 1 month and then 2 months, and you could add on months rather than just being like a set package of, oh, it's 5 months. Take that into consideration when you're thinking about your gap year. And then we looked into studying programs which are the cheapest and the best options for learning Mandarin. Once you have your countries down, you need to decide on obviously a budget, or maybe even before you decide on the countries, decide on a budget. So I think for both of us, because we both kind of knew that we wanted to do a gap year for quite a while, like at least a year in advance, in year 13, the Christmas of year 13, and then in year 13 our birthdays, where obviously we both turned 18, which are quite big birthdays. Both of us, because we already knew from year 12 that we were going to travel together and had a vague idea before going into year 13 what kind of countries. We knew Australia was going to be expensive, so I just asked for money for Christmas and money for my 18th birthday. That amounted to quite a lot, and I saved that up, so I kind of knew roughly that I'd have the money from like birthdays and Christmas. Okay. Sorry guys, my camera died. Number 3. Budget. Now this is really, really important, and lots of people have different ways of planning it and writing it down. I had a notebook that I used to plan my trip. I did have it, but I can't find it at the moment because we're about to move house, so everything is just shoved everywhere and I couldn't find it, unfortunately. I personally prefer handwritten, although I did also use Google Docs to roughly put down dates and prices of things, but I also just handwrote basic things that you need to know about the countries and the destinations you're travelling to. So for example, daily budgets, I'd write down country or city, daily budget, roughly know how much flights are, roughly know what accommodation is. You can use that to decide how much you think you'll need, how much you think you'll spend. Will you spend the upper end, the middle end, the lower end? How budgety do you want to go? How much are you willing to spend? 4. you need to decide when you want to leave. So I know a lot of people who took gap years and they travelled in their gap years too, and they worked for 9 months or so. So they'd work from June until about March, February time, and then they'd go travelling for that time from March, April, all the way until the end of August. So that's quite a long time to travel as well. So you can do it lots of different ways. Personally, we decided to travel in December because we wanted to get the summer in Australia and we wanted to experience that. And we also really wanted to go to the Falls Festival in Australia, which was for New Year. So we kind of planned our trip around those dates. If you really are on a budget, think about when the peak seasons are. Flights and accommodation can increase during those types of periods. So you might want to go when it's slightly colder, or you might want to go in the off-peak when lots of people are still at school and they don't tend to travel. So that's when prices are going to be a lot cheaper. Things like that I would write down, I'd research how much during this season or what the weather's like, and I'll just write this down in my notebook and just get a general idea of what all the cities were and what the countries were and how much they were and all of that kind of stuff when I was planning as well. I still kind of do that now if I'm planning some kind of big trip. Number 5, kind of the section which is going to take the most time, but it's well worth doing everything that I'm about to tell you. Final stage is to plan the individual sections of your trip, which can take a long time. Let me tell you, planning Australia took a long time, but it was really worth it. Obviously we were there for 2 whole months, which is a long time as well, so that took a long time to plan, but it was really worth it. You just have to put time aside, any spare time you have in between school and working full time, if that's what you're doing, to just research thoroughly what you want to do. Now, I used Google, I used the internet, I used blogs, I used travel guides. So I mainly just used the internet and like bloggers and whatever resources I could find online to decide what I was going to do. If you want me to do a video on how I planned backpacking up Australia's east coast, then I could do another video, because if I did it here, we would be here forever. So yeah, if you want that as well, leave it in the comment section below and I will do that. But there are things that you first want to think about. First of all is any tours that you might want to do, or any things that will have set dates in, which will obviously affect when you can do things and when you can travel around. So for example, with us in Australia, the Falls Festival was obviously certain set dates and we knew we were going there and we'd bought tickets, so that affected when we would be getting to Byron Bay when we were going to the festival and when we could then move on from Byron Bay. Things like that you need to think about. Other things to think about are how are you going to travel to these places or travel around these places. Obviously initially, unless you're going to Europe or somewhere, you will be flying, so searching for cheap flights is another thing you need to be doing. Be flexible with your dates for when you're deciding when to fly out and when to fly in. There can be really cheap dates, especially if you play around with search engines. I spend a lot of time trying to find cheap flights. I use various different websites, I don't just use one website, and it means I can save money and travel a lot more than if I just relied on one website. Also, once you're in the country itself, so whether that's Southeast Asia, whether that's South America, or it's Australia, you need to decide how you're going to travel around within the country itself. You're probably going to use public transport. I mean, you could hire a car, but it's probably a lot more expensive. Trains, buses, maybe internal domestic flights. So we took a couple of domestic flights in Australia. Have a look around when you're planning how to travel around the country itself. Again, Lonely Planet guides like that online will tell you what's the easiest way. Other people who've been on gap years, you can see what they did. In Australia we used the Greyhound bus, which is a bus coach service, which is really good. I recommend it. In China we used trains and taxis because they're very cheap in China, and in Bali we used taxis again. We didn't use any public transport in Bali, we just mainly used taxis because it's really cheap. Yeah, those are kind of things you need to think about. You also need to think about if you need a visa to get into your country and how long the visa would last for, and whether you need to get, special quotation letter or something to get a specific visa if you're going to be there for a longer period of time, whether you're going to be working there, volunteering there, internship, whatever. You might need a specific type of visa and not just go on a tourist visa. So these are things you really do need to consider. Some countries, if you have a visa, when you arrive in the country you have to have proof of a flight out of the country as well. So for example, China, when you're applying for a visa, you need to have ticket proof of your flight into China and your flight out of China. That just means that those dates that you're flying in or flying out are very concrete. So I don't know if that's something to take into consideration, whether you want to do that or not. Vaccinations, you might be going to a place that you need extra vaccinations that aren't covered in your normal inoculations that you've probably had when you were a child, definitely go and make an appointment at your local travel clinic and they can advise you on which ones you need to take. They're not going to be free probably. A lot of things people ask me is how much accommodation did you book in advance? Did you know exact dates you were going to be in exact cities? You can plan that much in advance if you want to. We didn't want to have like such a strict plan. We wanted to be very flexible because things could change, things could come up. You could go to a hostel and meet a group of people who have hired a car and you want to go and join them on a day trip to somewhere, but if you've already booked your accommodation and you were supposed to leave that city that day, then you can't do it. Similarly, if you get to a city and you've booked 3 nights there and you get there and you're like, no, I really don't like this place, get me out of here, you kind of can't because you've already booked your accommodation. So what we did was, again, as I said, if you have fixed dates with fixed tours or fixed things that you're going to do or activities, book those nights accommodation, or if it's a tour, book the night before and the night after when you come back. But other than that, we had a very flexible schedule. I remember we extended our stay in Byron Bay, we extended our stay in Brisbane, we extended our stay in certain other places, and you can just do that if you're flexible and if you haven't booked that far ahead. And I think I've hopefully covered everything, and I made a little list. You also obviously need to then decide what you want to take, but that's a complete different story. This is just if you are planning a gap year, how to plan it. Quick recap is you need to decide what you want to do in your gap year. Number 2, if you do decide to go travelling or to do anything abroad, you need to pick your destinations. Where do you want to go? Why do you want to go there? How expensive is it? What kind of things are there that you want to do? 3, you need to budget. Budgeting is so important, and I learned so much just in my gap year having to budget everything. You need to look at how much you think you will need on your trip for your specific needs and wants and what you are going to do. 4, you need to decide when you want to leave. Do you want to leave because you have a specific date in mind, you want to go to a concert, or maybe a specific date you need to be home by because you've got an event on or something. Number 5 is once you've decided where you want to go, what you want to do, when you're going to leave, then you need to start planning specifically what you want to do in each destination, what you want to do in each city. It's good to have a rough idea just so you know roughly what you're doing on each date, or at least know what area you're going to be in. So I would definitely recommend doing this, even though it does take a lot of time and effort. But I mean, it's also something to look forward to whenever you're sitting down and planning, and it just made me happier because I knew that I was going to work every day, and the reason why was because I was going to go and travel to these amazing places. I was going to go and see new things and going to experience different things and meet new people and just travel and see more of the world. I think I've covered most things. I honestly do think that it's mainly just been me rambling, talking to the camera about my experience and about what I did, and I'm really sorry if it hasn't really had some kind of structure or anything to it. I do hope in between my ramblings that there has been some useful content in here and it has helped in guiding you in where to start when you're thinking about planning a gap year. The useful websites that I found when I was planning mine was obviously Google. Google Docs is really good if you're travelling with a partner and you can both update the same document at the same time. Something I've recently found out about that I haven't used but I think seems pretty cool is My Google Maps. If you type into Google My Google Map, you can then pinpoint different countries and cities and then create your own itinerary and see it on a map yourself. I haven't used it myself yet for any other trips, but it seems pretty cool, so you could look into that if you wanted to. Another website I use for flights is skyscanner.com. It's very good for checking cheap flights in different locations. I didn't just use that website though, because sometimes you can find even cheaper flights on other websites. And also hostelworld.com, we didn't really book that much accommodation in advance, but it's good to get a general idea of which hostel you want to stay in and see what the availability is like and the facilities there. I've also written a bunch of posts on my gap year on my own blog, so I will link that in the description below. Another thing, if you're new to my channel, you won't know, but I do travel a lot. It wasn't just in my gap year, and mainly I document my travels on my Instagram account and my blog. My Instagram is at viola helen. I'll put it right here if you want to give me a follow, and you can join the adventures. I do feel as though I have a lot of advice and tips I can give you. I want to do more sit down videos related to travel, so if this is something you would like to see as well, please let me know by giving this video a thumbs up or a comment below. Otherwise, honestly, there's no indication for me to know that you guys like watching this content. If you want to see more videos like this, hit the subscribe button, and If you think this video would be useful to anyone you know who's taking a gap year or who is considering one, please share this video. Hopefully I will have been of some help. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!